Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Debra Pinkerton. Welcome to a special edition of Morning Light. Pennsylvania Decides.
In just a moment, our Morning Light panel will go behind the headlines.
But first, the Black Pastors United for Education held a national town hall meeting on education at a Pennsylvania church on Saturday, and you were there.
I was there.
And all of the vice presidential candidates were invited, but only Republican J.D. Vance and Libertarian candidate Mike Termott accepted.
Well, Morning Light had the opportunity to ask a direct question to Mr. Vance about his faith. Here's his response.
So I'm a devout, practicing, church-going Christian. And I say that I was actually baptized for the first time in 2019, so that wasn't always true. Now, I was raised by that grandmother because my mom struggled with opioid addiction for a big chunk of my life, and she was a woman of very profound Christian faith. She didn't graduate from high school, but she thought more about what the Bible required of her than any person that I've ever met in my life. So I left high school. I served 4 years in the United States Marine Corps. And then by around the time that I got out of the Marines and was starting college at Ohio State, don't hold it against me, I know you're a Minnesota guy, I started to think that I knew more than Mamaw did. And I started to think that to be educated and to be knowledgeable in the ways of the world meant that I had to discard the Christian faith that Mamaw had raised me in. And I think that's a story for a lot of kids, a lot of adolescents. They start to think that they know a little bit, and then they start to think that they know a lot. You start thinking about the big questions about what do you want to be as a father? What do you want to be as a husband? What is required of me to be a good man? And I kept coming back to the answers were found in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so that led me back to my faith. And I got baptized for the first time, like I said, in 2019. And one of the critical, just if I could say one more thing on that, Pastor, one of the critical to me takeaways of the Christian faith is, whether big or small, whether rich or poor, Christian politics should be about the common good. Whether you're a Bible-believing Christian or not, you should pursue the kind of society where people can live a good life, where they can raise their children with good values, where if they work hard, they can earn enough to provide for a family. And I think fundamentally that is how I see my politics, as motivated by that sense that if you work hard and play by the rules, whether you agree with my religious faith or not, you ought to be able to provide for a family, you ought to be able to give your kids a good education, and you ought to be able to build a life in this country that all of us love. That, to me, is the politics of the common good, and it's very much influenced by my Christian faith.
Well, Luke Covert, you're joining us today. Thank you for being here this morning. Megan Martin, welcome back. Glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And the man of the hour, Pastor Joshua Robertson. Thank you for I know you've had a long weekend and you had to preach after the Secret Service took over your church and you had snipers on every corner and police officers surrounding it. Let me just begin with you. When you hear a politician talk about their faith, if you're a Republican or if you're a Democrat and you hear them talking about faith, immediately the other side's antennas go up. Republicans would say, I hear a Democrat talking about faith. That's not real because of their positions on certain social issues. When a Republican, the reverse happens. When you're hearing this, how are you responding in the moment to hearing him talk about his faith?
Well, I think first is I am glad that he's willing to talk about it openly and publicly and to share. I think that's, as a Christian, our responsibility is to share our convictions concerning Christ and how that influences the work that we do. So I'm encouraged by it, but it's not just what you talk, it's what you walk.
Right.
And so for me, I look for, is there a care for the least of these, right? He spoke of the common good for all people. And I think that the way to accomplish the common good for all people is to think about the least of these first. And if we can take care of them, the common will of all will be also taken care of.
And that was really the subject of the conversation of students who were caught in the crossfire often of a political debate, but they're in classrooms or at home, often not learning or not getting an education. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Megan, your response to this, when you hear politicians talking about faith, does your radar go up? Do you add a layer of cynicism or skepticism if it's a Democrat or if it's a Republican, or do you take it at face value?
I would like to say that I'm taking it at face value, but I think after being a candidate last year, statewide candidate, it's colored my perceptions a little bit. And I'm looking for candidates who are authentic, who say what they mean and mean what they say. And when they talk about their faith, I want to believe them. I want to believe that their faith is their moral compass and it's their North Star by which they live their lives and make all their decisions. And I'm the eternal optimist, and so I certainly prided myself in being that kind of candidate. And it was very positively received, I would say, in most parts of the state and by most people. But there were times when some folks, when they saw my faith, they made it very clear that they would not support me because of that. And that's very unfortunate. And I think it speaks volumes as to kind of where we are today in our society, unfortunately.
Luke, you come from a fairly cynical generation, who here, you're a little more optimistic, I think, than your generation. But when you hear this, how are you weighing it? And when you're watching it with your family, do you immediately say, hey, that's a Christian, we should support them? Or are you saying, there's a caution in here?
Yeah, I think my immediate response is that there's a caution in there because I think on the right, we worry about the left virtue signaling. And I think on the left, they worry about us lying and virtue signaling in the same way. So when I hear somebody talk about their faith, I think it's an amazing way to kind of state what they want to say is their viewpoint. But I do want to see a program of action for somebody's life, and what they're actually doing in life, and not just what they're saying that they're going to do. And I do worry sometimes that people who aren't thinking super deeply will see it and think that is we're voting for an identity as if that matters deeply, when the identity is more of the flag or the outward statement of what will be done by that person, which I think is what affects people.
Josh, do you think that sometimes people are being asked to kind of cut the cake one way and say, well, this person may not be a religious person or a faith-filled person, but I think we'll get better policies, and say, well, they're good Christian but bad politics, or should they be one and the same and joined, that a good Christian has good policies that flow from their faith? How do you weigh that?
Well, I mean, I think the real responsibility lies with us as the people. We should be leveraging our votes based off of the future we want to see, not based off of just the character of the individuals. I think in who we pick, the people who we pick, we should vet their character, vet their policy, but they should be fulfilling what we desire as a people, not us looking to them for them to lead us, but no, you lead the cause that we told you we want you to lead. I think that's the true legacy of the American democratic experiment.
President Reagan famously stopped going to church in the White House and resumed after because he didn't want to disturb worshipers, and it was a sincerely held conviction that he had. President Carter went to church. Bill Clinton went to church every Sunday. Bill Clinton famously carried a Bible, but in many ways he would say he fell short of his own faith standard. Is there anything we can deduce, or how, if you're helping a viewer kind of weigh on the surface what people are saying, you having been a political candidate at one point, how do you look for those? What are the interactions that indicate to you that this is a real deal? Is it how they tip the waiter? Is it how they treat the doorman? Is it more about what they say in public? What's the balance there?
I think it's the totality of all the circumstances. I think you look to what they say, and again, do they say what they mean and mean what they say, but then do they put what they're saying into action, and how are they living their everyday lives? Are they treating their family well? Do they treat their spouse with dignity and respect? Have they raised their children, to be good human beings? And have they made their faith kind of the foundation upon which their family, their whole life is built? I think that you really have to look deeper. It's much more than just what they say. Anybody can say, I'm a good person or I'm a Christian, but are you really? And I think that part of our obligations as citizens is to peel back the onion and look and do our research and see, is this really a person of upstanding character and a person who is going to be in alignment with my values or not?
When you hear Megan talk about character and you hear candidates evaluated on character, there's a generation of people now that are saying character is no longer the issue, it is about results. And so we separate that and say, you might have good character, but we don't want you leading a country. What is your response to that? Do you think there is still room to re-inject that character and still get good policies, or are we just past that?
No, I don't think we're past it at all. I think character and action go hand in hand. I think what I am tired of is when we say character is the thing we're after, because what benefits the American people is what the character does, in my opinion.
Interesting.
The character is, is the starting point for the actions people take, and it's the actions people take. And I know in my own life, I spent a long time thinking that my intentions were what mattered.
Right.
And that if I had good intentions, then I was off the hook for anything that happened negatively because of my actions. And I had to flip it. And I think that I'm still a Christian, church-going, love the Lord, but I had it wrong from church. I had it told to me backwards, or the way that I picked it up was backwards, which was that I can say I have great character, I can say these are my beliefs, and so I'm off the hook for anything else. And so when people put the faith thing first, to me it feels like it's backwards. Yeah. That's what I think.
You're a civil rights leader, you're an education reform leader, but you're first and foremost a pastor. As a pastor looking at this moment, do the qualifications for a public official, and as the Bible would interpret it, and a pastor, are they similar in the sense that the people that we elevate to these positions, should they be under that same kind of test that leaders historically in the Bible were asked to, and when they fall short, have to repent? But what is the standard that we should have if we're resetting this whole conversation after this election?
Well, if this was a theocracy, then, God was first and foremost in this country, as from a Christian perspective, then I think, yes, we should expect our political leaders to reflect the character that you see in the scripture. But this is not.
Right.
We're in a democracy. So I think, maybe America needs to reimagine what does the character look like for our political leaders, decide on that, have a litmus test for that, and then apply that. I think we actually have the creative genius to do that. But I think we allow what we see. And I think that's the biggest problem. We're complicit with the dysfunction, and that's alarming.
About 15 seconds here. What's the #1 character trait you would love to see going forward after this election, as we're selecting another generation of leaders? What's the most important character trait they should have?
Honesty. I think the ability to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help us God. I think that is important, because you can't help something without naming it. You can't turn the page on something without looking at it squarely, face to face. So being truthful about the problems, being truthful about the attempts to solve the problems, and being an honest person, I think that's the key.
We're going to talk to you more in just a little bit. Thank you, panel, for being here. Well, coming up on Morning Light, Pastor Joshua Robertson is going to stay with us for a deeper conversation on school choice in just a minute.
During the town hall on education, Pastor Robertson shared some sobering statistics on the state of public education. According to the national report card, there is a significant disparity in math and reading proficiency among students.
For example, when it comes to math, 35% of white students are proficient, compared to only 14% of Hispanics and 9% of black students.
And when it comes to reading, 38% of white students are proficient, 21% Hispanics, and 16% black students.
So, Pastor Josh, you formed a group of pastors to focus on this issue, and you call it the civil rights issue of our time. That is not an easy thing to do in a political environment. Took a lot of courage. What's been the response as you raise the alarm? And you're in some uncharted waters here.
Absolutely. The response has been tough. If people who are public school advocates don't like the fact that I fight for school choice, and people that are school choice advocates don't like the fact that I fight for the right and proper funding of public schools. So I'm for the kids. So I could care less about the political ramifications of this, who gets into the office. I do too many funerals, and I help too many people with grief and trauma to care about the politics that surround us. I care about the people. And so I know politics plays a role, and so I believe in being civically engaged. But I'm not going to allow politics or politicians or parties to muzzle my mouth as it concerns to speaking up for this 21st century civil rights issue.
And that's absolutely right, because that's why I loved what you had to say. It does come down to the kids. You know, no child left behind. That's really what we're looking for. We want everyone to have this, be at the same level, to be educated, to succeed in life. Absolutely. Isn't that the American dream?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're fighting for it, right? So, you know, I don't want a handout, right? I want equal footing for all people so that we can all pursue the American dream together.
You kept this conversation on the rails anytime it went, the Libertarian candidate or Vice Presidential candidate J.D. Vance. You kept it on the rails. We're not going to attack each other. We're not going to say anything unkind about anyone. Is that difficult for you to do? I mean, you're up against a powerful person. You've got 40 Secret Service agents. You've got snipers on the roof. You've got the police force of Harrisburg blocking every street, and you're here speaking in this relaxed way to a person that could potentially be president. How did you prepare for this moment?
Well, you know, as a Christian, you know, you look at, you know, Mark chapter 1, verse number 35 through 39, and you see Jesus rose early in the morning, and he had his devotional life where he spent time with God. And for me, I've had to, especially in this season of having people who you think are friends and family, you know, walk away from you, disparage your name, all those things. I've had to be affirmed by God. I've had to root myself in the truth of the scripture and let that be my guide and let that be my affirmation. So when I get on that stage and speak to anyone, they're another God's child, and whatever power they have is because God delegated that to them. Mm-hmm. So for me, I stand for my people. I stand for not just black people, white people, Hispanic. I stand for people, and I love people and I love God. And so, you know, when God needs a trumpet, a flute won't do. So yeah. I got to speak up.
And that was really the one thing that I thought he said that was really just overpowered everything, when he said, God is in control. And I think that's really what has to give us peace, knowing that God is in control and there is a plan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the sovereignty of God is what I live on and stand on.
What's next for you? You have this, spend 30 seconds just talking about this vision you have for every church in America.
Absolutely. Every church in America could be used to educate children. The statistics that you just named, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, you name it, there's a church in proxy that could be a part of the solution. And I think churches should use our buildings and our resources to help overcome.
Which is what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. And I didn't come into this wanting to be an educator or wanting to have a school or a learning center. No, I was meeting the needs of my community, and our community is crying out for pastors to be courage, to display courage and to display wisdom and integrity, but to have this vision where every church in America can be a part of the solution as it relates to education.
Black Pastors United for Education, the Rock Church. My son Henry and I checked out your church again Sunday. It was awesome, great music. Great preaching. I can't believe you preached after that weekend, intense weekend. So the Lord was carrying you.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you for bringing people together and showing them the light.
Absolutely. That's what we do as Christians. So thank you for this opportunity to share today.
Well, coming up next on Morning Light, whether you want to explore the Bible more deeply or you're discovering it for the very first time, the Museum of the Bible has something for everyone. I'll take you on a family road trip to the Museum of the Bible in the nation's capital.
And good morning, Philadelphia, home to at least 100 museums, but it also is considered the mural capital of the U.S. with more than 2,000 outdoor murals. Thank you for watching Morning Light on Lighthouse TV. Well, we are taking you on a family road trip to the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. The museum showcases rare artifacts spanning 4,000 years of history and how the Bible really impacts the world around us.
Well, I sat down with the chief marketing officer, told me people from all walks of life, not just Christians, come through the museum's doors every year. So what is the big idea and the big story behind the Museum of the Bible? Why is it here in Washington, D.C.?
So it starts with the Green family, who had a large collection of artifacts and items that they needed to find a home for. and it was in warehouses, and they tasked a group of people to find a place. They looked at different cities across the country, I think Chicago, New York, LA and Dallas. The choice fell on obviously Washington DC, the capital of museums in the country, and I think it was a conscious choice to bring the Bible to the place where politics and culture merge. And there's 7 floors. Everything about this building is done with intention. So holy number 7. So, there's 3 main floors at the museum, which kind of tell the perspectives by which we kind of tell the story of the Bible. So the history of the Bible, where you talk about artifacts and really kind of more heady intellectual context of what the Bible is about. All from old cylinders from Nebuchadnezzar and other artifacts that we have in there, old Bibles. And then we go to the narrative, the story of the Bible, where we talk about the Hebrew Bible experience and the New Testament experience. And there's a little village that resembles Nazareth at the time of Jesus, and it's more kind of an interactive, immersive way of kind of diving into what the story of the Bible is. And then the second floor that we have there is the impact floor, where we talk about how the Bible influenced society, different aspects of society there. So from civil rights to history, to culture, to music, to fashion. And that's all prepared in different ways where people kind of see, I didn't know this was the case. We're sitting in this beautiful space that talks about how many languages the Bible has been and has not been translated into right now. And we have a theater in the museum, 480 to 500 people who can sit there. There's concerts and there's plays that we have here. And it's just a piece of this facet of things that expose people to exploring the message of the Bible, God's desire to have a relationship with us.
Would a skeptic of the Bible be comfortable being in this place, and how would different people approach a museum like this?
Yeah, our mission statement is that we want to invite all people to engage with the transformative power of the Bible. So at the core of this mission statement is the word transformation. So we want people to live differently, whatever that means, right? So there's no specific audience. We're embracing everybody, right? So we had just the other day an influential Muslim person being here, and he sent us an email afterwards and said it was one of the most impactful things that he's seen. He brought his whole family and said every Muslim needs to see the Museum of the Bible. And in other cases, you have school classes who come here. So, and it's, there's a wide range, and they have their different favorites, things at the museum. You can come here multiple times and then discover something new every time you come.
How can the museum potentially help the Bible be a more unifying in how we approach it, and perhaps less as a tool for dividing a country?
Yeah. A friend of mine says the middle is the most dangerous place in society these days, and sometimes you have to take a stand and you can't be in the middle, but we're apolitical, we're non-denominational, we embrace all people, but we're focused on the Bible and we're focused on the gospel, really just to tell people what the Bible is about, and we let the Bible speak for itself. There's no altar call at the end of the museum. We leave room for the Holy Spirit to do His work. We tell the story, we expose it, and we trust God to take it. And that story may lead you to a ministry, it may lead you to a church that continue the journey, but we're part of it. We work closely together with Jewish organizations, work together with Christian organizations, and we just want to help people to build a closer relationship with God. This is a wonderful place here. I'm exposed to many different perspectives that I didn't have before. In my team alone, I have Quakers, Catholics, agnostics. We have a Jewish rabbi on staff here, and I learned from him. And it doesn't mean that I agree with everything that I hear, every position that people bring up to me, but sometimes challenge is the best way to refine. Iron sharpens iron, so I think that's something that certainly happens here.
Well, the Museum of the Bible is open daily from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. To plan your family road trip, visit museumofthebible.org.
Stay with us. We will be back right after the break.
Welcome back to Morning Light. Well, on Saturday night on Allison Hill in Harrisburg, something pretty special happened. A beautiful little church, a congregation, and local pastors extending hospitality to 4 candidates for vice president from the political parties appearing on most of the 50 state ballots next Tuesday. 2 accepted. For nearly 2 hours, there was a respectful, serious exchange of ideas on how to make education work for students in public, private, Christian, and homeschool settings. The church sanctuary seated about 150. The conversation was substantive. No booing. Can you imagine that? No sarcasm or jokes about the other side. And at the end, Pastor Josh, you just saw him a few minutes ago, prayed a blessing over both candidates and their families. I was there. It was powerful. And it was only possible because the goal of that town hall meeting was to listen and learn. And also because so many were praying this event could be different. Are you praying for your political candidates, both parties, and for the response, no matter what happens in the election? So it was a special evening. So here's to Pastor Robertson and the other brave pastors for acting on the courage of their conviction to follow God's lead, to be Christians who unify. That's a challenge to you and me. These actions were nothing short of heroic. For Debra and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check on your neighbors. God willing, we'll see you again tomorrow morning.